You're listening to the N2K Space Network.
AI agents are now reading sensitive data, executing actions, and making decisions across our environments. But are we managing their access safely? Join Dave Bittner and Barak Shalef from Oasis Security on Wednesday, December 3rd at 1 p.m. Eastern for a live discussion on agentic access management and how to secure non-human identities without slowing innovation. Can't make it live? Register now to get on-demand access after the event. Visit events.thecyberwire.com. That's events with an s.thecyberwire.com to save your spot.
Ever wished you could rebuild your network from scratch to make it more secure, scalable, and simple? Meet Meter, the company reimagining enterprise networking from the ground up. Meter builds full-stack, zero-trust networks, including hardware, firmware, and software, all designed to work seamlessly together. The result? Fast, reliable, and secure connectivity without the constant patching, vendor juggling, or hidden costs. From wired and wireless to routing, switching, firewalls, DNS security, and VPN, every layer is integrated and continuously protected in one unified platform. And since it's delivered as one predictable monthly service, you skip the heavy capital costs and endless upgrade cycles. Meter even buys back your old infrastructure to make switching effortless. Transform complexity into simplicity and give your team time to focus on what really matters, helping your business and customers thrive. Learn more and book your demo at meter.com/cyberwire. That's meter.com/cyberwire.
Today is December the 1st, 2025. I'm Alice Carruth, and this is T-Minus.
T-Minus 20 seconds to LOS T-Dress. Go for deploy. Roger, roll.
Russia's only crewed mission launch site has suffered major damage following last Thursday's Soyuz rocket launch.
4.
A new crew launched and arrived at the International Space Station on Thanksgiving Day.
3.
A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launched on November the 28th from Vandenberg for the Transporter 15 mission.
2.
Europe's Vega C rocket launched an advanced Korean Earth observation satellite from French Guiana.
1.
ESA member states committed €22.1 billion in contributions at the annual ministerial meeting.
0.
Later in the programme, Bailey Reichelt and Matthew Linton will be tackling space law FAQs. This month, they're going to be dealing with new and expanded language in the context of export controls and international agreements. If you deal with that in any way, shape or form, then you won't want to miss it. Happy Monday, everyone. And for our US listeners, I hope you enjoyed a food-filled extended Thanksgiving weekend. We've got a lot to catch up on since our last daily programme, so let's dive in. Just before Thanksgiving break, the European Space Agency's member states, associate members and cooperating states convened a ministerial council meeting. Thanks to the trends we're seeing led by Germany and France, the outcome of the meeting was expected to see an increase in spending and plans for more sovereign capabilities from the continent. And the results did not disappoint. The Council approved the largest contributions in the history of the European Space Agency, €22.1 billion. That's over $25.7 billion to those of us not keeping up with the currency exchange. This year's Ministerial Council was the first stage of the implementation of ESA's Strategy 2040, setting the course for European space ambitions and defining the objectives that must be met to achieve long-term goals for Europe's activities in space and in applications on Earth. The funding is expected to focus on 3 areas: Earth observation, navigation, and telecommunications. ESA says these three elements are fundamental to the European Resilience from Space Initiative, a joint response to critical space needs in security and resilience. We'll be monitoring when the space agency commits funding to projects in the coming months. And staying with Europe, a Vega C rocket launched today from French Guiana. The rocket carried South Korea's COMSAT-7 spacecraft into orbit. COMSAT-7, which stands for Korea Multipurpose Satellite 7, will provide high-resolution satellite images for South Korea's government and institutions. The VV-28 mission took off from French Guiana at 2:21 p.m. local time. It's not the only satellite launched by the South Koreans over the last few days. Last Thursday, they launched their largest satellite yet on a nationally developed space rocket called Nuri. It was the fourth of 6 missions planned through 2027. The 3-stage Nuri rocket lifted off from a spaceport on an island off the southwest coast. Aerospace officials said the rocket placed the satellite and 12 microsatellites into a target orbit around 372 miles above Earth. The country's science minister said that the successful launch reaffirmed that South Korea had independent space launch and transport capability. And staying with launch news, a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launched on November the 28th from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California for the Transporter 15 mission. On board this mission were 140 payloads. Amazing. That included CubeSats, microsats, hosted payloads, and orbital transfer vehicles carrying 13 of those payloads to be deployed at a later time. A key mission manager for the Transporter 15 was ExoLaunch, which deployed 59 customer satellites from the Falcon 9's upper stage. Those payloads included the T-Microsat-1 from Taiwan's Tron Future Tech, Spin-2, a European Space Agency-backed CubeSat made primarily by Italian company Space Products and Innovation, and US-based CareWeather's Viris 0G Brendan satellite. And let's also catch up on the other launches that happened over Thanksgiving. A new crew launched and arrived at the International Space Station on Thanksgiving Day. A Soyuz MS-28 spacecraft carrying 3 members boarded the ISS on Thursday, November the 27th. The spacecraft arrived at the orbiting lab's Rafael module at 7:34 a.m. It carried 1 NASA astronaut and 2 Roscosmos cosmonauts. The trio will spend approximately 8 months aboard the space station before returning to Earth in summer 2026. But it wasn't all mission success for the new space station crew, at least not for those left behind. Russia's only crewed mission launch site has suffered major damage following last Thursday's Soyuz rocket launch. The Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan will be unable to host launches until repairs are made, according to the space agency Roscosmos. It's the first time in decades that Russia has lost the ability to send people to space. Roscosmos shared the footage of the launch and later shared images on social media, which showed part of the launch pad collapse into an exhaust trench below as a result of the rocket's blast. Roscosmos told state media that, quote, "The launch complex's condition is currently being assessed and all necessary backup components are available for restoration. The damage is expected to be repaired in the near future." That wraps up today's Intel briefing. Stay with us for more on space law FAQs and the latest on the Chapea mission. You'll find links to further reading on all the articles mentioned throughout the episode in the selected reading section of today's show notes. A lot of people are listening to podcasts through YouTube, and if that's the way you prefer to listen to this show, well, good news for everyone. T-Space is indeed on YouTube. We post our episodes there along with video clips from interviews and events throughout the year. So if you're dual screening at work and keep the YouTube player going all day while your head's down, listen, I get it, I'm not judging. At N2K Cyber is our company's YouTube channel, and you'll find the T-Space Daily playlist there, along with the other shows we make here at N2K. Again, that's at N2K Cyber on YouTube.
AI is transforming every industry, but it's also creating new risks that traditional frameworks can't keep up with. Assessments today are fragmented, overlapping, and often specific to industries, geographies, or regulations. That's why Black Kite created the BKGA3 AI Assessment Framework to give cybersecurity and risk teams a unified, evolving standard for measuring AI risk across their own organizations and their vendors' AI use. It's global, research-driven, built to evolve with the threat landscape, and free to use. Because Black Kite is committed to strengthening the entire cybersecurity community. Learn more at blackkite.com.
I'll hand you over now to Bailey Reichel and Matthew Linton for the Space Law FAQs.
Welcome back this week to Space Law FAQs. I'm one of your hosts, Bailey Reichel. My background's in space law. I'm a regulatory attorney, and here's my co-host, Matt Linton.
Hi, Bailey. Thank you. Matt Linton. My firm is Linton Space Law. I focus on outside general counsel work and all of the pieces in between for early stage space, AI, and deep tech companies. So this episode, we are focused on a trend that we are seeing that deals with new and expanded language in the context of export controls in international agreements. And this is something that is easy to look over in these contracts, but it is critical to pay attention to. And I would like to ask you, Bailey, when you are seeing these expanded provisions, some of them are very difficult to work with. And let me give you, an example from a contract that we've recently seen. Among the various language you would see about compliance with different countries' export controls and things like that, some of these more aggressive contracts are including provisions that would say something like, in the event that there is some issue, that you, the seller, would have to replace or modify restricted technology of the deliverables. How practically does anyone comply with a open-ended requirement like replace the technology to comply with export control without knowing what they're going to need to do should that occur? This could be very costly, it seems, if not impossible. What do you think?
So I'm seeing this language get flowed down to U.S. suppliers on mostly European contracts. I just want to be clear, it's commercial contracts. This is not government contracting, because that'd be a totally different conversation if it were U.S. like FARs and DFARs. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about international buy-sell agreements. Normally, I see really boilerplate terms about complying with the international law of whatever country you're doing business with. So if you have a U.S. person and a French person, they both agree that they're going to comply with the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and the French version of anti-corruption. They're going to comply with the ITAR and EAR, and they're going to list all the citations and say that, non-compliance with these is perhaps a termination for a default reason. That's what I normally see. And we skim right over it and say, yes, everyone must follow the laws. If you don't follow the laws, that's a problem. But yeah, the language you just paraphrased, in the event that an export or import authorization is not obtained or revoked, that is, and it's attributable to a supplier's fault or simple negligence, the supplier shall, at its own cost, within a time frame compatible with the delivery schedule, take actions to obtain the relevant obtain from the relevant administration any required authorization, or replace or modify the restricted technology or parts of the deliverable and or the work. That's crazy.
No, that's brutal. So, it sounds like one of the things you said here was simple negligence, which our listeners may not be as attuned to. What is meant by simple negligence as a concept in the law and a contract here, and why does that matter?
Well, it's going to depend on the law that's governing the contract, or if we have defined terms within the contract. But in general, if you go to law school, you talk about negligence in different terms. in contracts, you mostly see gross negligence. So if someone, allows gross negligence to occur and someone gets hurt, we see indemnification and liability provisions. This is common. If you go Control F, any contract you have, you probably see the phrase gross negligence. We don't see simple negligence that often. I looked up simple negligence, just like a lay definition. It's failure to exercise ordinary care. But the thing that's weird here is, like, what is failure to exercise ordinary care in the context of applying for an export license? Does that mean like you submitted it with only 3 months lead time, but you really should have had 4? I mean, that's the best I can figure, but like, it's such a subjective determination. I mean, what would you think would happen if you had a breach of contract claim on this provision and you had to go argue it in court?
Yeah, I think this would be quite difficult. And as you mentioned, it generally speaking, negligence should be an objective standard, right? What's that kind of general community standard? But when you talk about something here like simple negligence, it effectively becomes almost bespoke to the particular situation and loses sight of what would be potential industry norms, even if those existed. Like you said, just look at the pure timing of filing something. That can vary wildly and may or may not have anything to do with any sort of negligence whatsoever. It could just be that the company just has a hot new product and they've got it on the market quickly. And so the license request came closer toward the need to ship than one otherwise would have done. And so it becomes, as something that is almost impossible to reconcile. And ultimately, from the client perspective, that's not what you want in a contract, right? Because that means you're paying lawyers to figure out something that may or may not even be something they could figure out to begin with. And so you're going to put yourself into a world where you're not actually solving any problems with this sort of language. You're in fact creating problems. And I think from our perspective, we would look at this for clients, right, more in the sense of, well, how do you resolve a dispute if there is a dispute, and how do you put in the language that might help move things forward without going to whoever thinks somebody has committed, quote, simple negligence or not? Which, again, putting negligence in itself into contract language always is problematic. Contracts are about the contractual language. You try to avoid having to deal with negligence determinations, which is tort law. We don't want that in contracts. So, suggestion or thought here for Bailey, how would you look at dealing with this kind of language, especially, let's say it's an important buyer, right? An important buyer, U.S. company is selling to. And they get this kind of language. What do you think, the approach should be?
I think the immediate approach is strike it and go back to your standard export provisions. We'll all obey the law to the best of our ability, but if the U.S. government will not authorize the export, it should lead to some way to save everyone, right? A termination provision. And it could really make the contract untenable. There is another section of this that I think is really important to point out, is that what they ask you to do if you can't get your authorization and you can't get it on a time frame compatible with the schedule, is they basically tell you, well, go try and get it again, or replace or modify the restricted technology or parts of the deliverable and or the work. So it seems like they're saying, if you can't comply with the normal administrative process in your country to fulfill this contract, we're not letting you off the hook. You're not off the hook. You have to, what I'm interpreting as, re-engineer your product or rewrite the technology. And in this case, in export controls, it's probably talking about a document like a drawing or a manual or something. You have to replace it or modify whatever technology you're not getting the authorization for so that you can get the authorization or that you don't need one. And so my interpretation of that is they're saying, we don't really care what the U.S. government says. You need to find a way around it to make this contract work. That's what I read this to say. And that's just not a good provision to agree to.
Yeah, the costs for trying to comply could be more than the entire value of the contract, which without things like caps or better dispute resolution, really are problematic. And so I think our takeaway is when looking at new agreements with your customers that are international, it is of paramount importance to really pay attention to these kinds of provisions that could come back to haunt your company. And often they are negotiable, but they're not negotiable after you sign it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great takeaway, Matt. Guys, I don't know how many times I'll have to say this, but read your contracts.
We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. You're ready to move your business forward, but first, you need to find the right team. Start your search with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It can help you reach qualified candidates fast, ensuring your listing is the first one they see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. See the results for yourself. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back. While we're on the topic of catching up on news, during the US government shutdown, the Chapeya 2 mission started. NASA's Chapeya 2 crew officially began their stay inside the agency's simulated Mars habitat at Johnson Space Center on October the 19th. It's the agency's second 378-day simulated Mars mission and will be a 1 full year stay designed to mimic what life on the red planet might be really like. Now imagine moving into a new home, except your new home is 1,700 square feet of 3D printed walls, sealed airlocks, and a whole lot of red dust simulations. And your roommates, 3 other people who signed up to eat shelf-stable food and troubleshoot habitat anomalies for fun. Honestly, we salute them. The Chapeya habitat, called Mars June Alpha, will test how crews might live, work, and stay healthy on a long-duration stay on Mars. Think crop growing, habitat maintenance, stressful delays in communications, and simulated EVAs, all while relying on space-to-Earth-style networked systems that mirror what future astronauts will use. Why do we care? Well, these analog missions help NASA design the connectivity, logistics, and life support networks that make real off-world living possible. Every sensor ping, every comms delay, every resource tracking system inside the habitat is data that will shape the future Mars digital infrastructure. So congratulations and good luck to the Chapeya 2 crew. And remember, if your biggest worry today is a slow Wi-Fi connection, at least you're not expecting one with a 20-minute Mars latency. I wonder if they get the old dial-up tone to go with it. And that's it for T-Minus, brought to you by N2K Cyberwire. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. Your feedback ensures we deliver the insights that keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing space industry. If you like the show, and we really do hope you do, please share a rating and review in your podcast app. Please also fill out the survey in the show notes or send an email to me at space@n2k.com. We're proud that N2K Cyberwire is part of the daily routine of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, from the Fortune 500 to many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K helps space and cyber professionals grow, learn, and stay informed. As the nexus for discovery and connection, we bring you the people, technology, and ideas shaping the future of secure innovation. Learn how at n2k.com. Our producer is Liz Stokes. We're mixed by Elliot Peltzman and Trey Hester, with original music by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. Peter Kilpie is our publisher. Our host is Maria Varmazes, and I'm senior producer Alice Carruth. Thanks for listening.
T-minus